There is something within us quiet, unnoticed, and persistent that sabotages the life we dream of. It whispers when we aim higher, it tightens its grip when we step forward. It doesn't wear a mask or raise its voice. No, it convinces us that we are safe right where we are, but in reality it is the silent architect of regret. The biggest enemy of success is not out there in the world. It lives within us, and until we face it, no amount of ambition, planning, or talent will truly set us free. Let us peel back the layers and explore this enemy, not to fear it, but to understand it, confront it, and transcend it. Self-doubt is not a sudden storm that appears out of nowhere. It is a slow, quiet fog that creeps in unnoticed. It begins in the earliest moments of life, when a child hears, "Don't be foolish," or "You'll never be able to do that." At first, it is just a shadow barely felt. But over time, those voices settle deep into the unconscious, becoming a whispering presence that accompanies every dream, every ambition. We begin to internalize the doubts of others, adopting them as truths about ourselves. A careless remark from a parent, a cold teacher's criticism, or even the silent comparison to a more successful sibling. These moments carve the early wounds of inadequacy. As we grow, self-doubt matures with us. It learns to disguise itself. It doesn't always sound like fear. Sometimes it takes the shape of logic. Maybe this isn't the right time. Or humility. I shouldn't assume I'm good enough. It even wears the mask of perfectionism. I'll try once I'm fully prepared. But beneath these rationalizations lies the same quiet conviction. I am not enough. This belief becomes a prison. A woman may dream of starting her own business, but talks herself out of it, convinced she isn't experienced enough. A man may love to write, but refuses to share his work, fearing it isn't worthy. The tragedy is not in failing. It is in never even beginning. Self-doubt doesn't kill with a sword. It starves potential through hesitation. It steals moments by making us question our right to take up space. And yet, despite its grip, self-doubt is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of awareness. To doubt is to care. To worry is to imagine. The most accomplished souls have wrestled with the very same inner critic. What sets them apart is not their immunity to doubt, but their willingness to move in spite of it. They stepped forward, uncertain, trembling even, but they moved. They did not wait for the fear to vanish. They learned to carry it. The truth is, doubt never disappears entirely. There is no final moment when the voice in your head says, "You are now good enough." The only way forward is to act anyway. To show up while afraid, to speak even with a shaking voice. In doing so, we reclaim power over our inner narrative. We stop letting that voice define us. The more we act, the quieter the voice becomes, not because it stops speaking, but because we stop believing it. There's a story of a violinist who played a concert after breaking several fingers in an accident. When asked how she managed to perform, she replied, "I stopped asking whether I could. I decided to see what was possible. That is the secret." You don't need to silence your doubt. You only need to stop letting it lead. What if the next great invention, the next breathtaking painting, the next transformative book is already within you? But self-doubt has chained it to the walls of hesitation. What if the life you are yearning for is already yours, but you've convinced yourself you're unworthy of it? Self-doubt is a liar that borrows your voice. You don't owe it your loyalty. You owe yourself the chance to see what could happen if you tried. Let the doubt come, let it speak, but don't let it steer. Your life is not a courtroom where fear is the judge. It is a canvas, a journey. And every step you take through the fog of doubt brings you closer to the truth you've always known, but were too afraid to believe. You are enough. You always were. Fear of failure is one of the most insidious illusions created by the human mind. It is not merely a reaction to an external threat. It is a deep psychological construct built from memory, expectation, and the inherited wounds of generations before us. We fear not just the act of failing, but the meaning we attach to it. We fear what it might say about us, that we are incapable, unworthy, or fundamentally flawed. And so, long before we even try, we retreat. What makes this fear so powerful is that it doesn't rely on reality. It feeds on possibility. The mind, gifted with imagination, begins to project worst-case scenarios: humiliation, rejection, loss, shame. It turns a dream into a risk, a step forward into a danger zone. The person who considers starting a business begins to picture bankruptcy. The aspiring speaker imagines being laughed off stage. The student who wants to apply to a top university envisions a rejection letter and the weight of disappointment it carries. These visions are not truths. They are stories we tell ourselves, stories powerful enough to freeze action. And yet, if we look closely, we begin to see that failure is not the villain we imagine. It is not a door slammed shut, but rather a part of the process of learning. Every child falls when learning to walk. Not once, but many times, and yet we do not call that failure. We call it growth. But somewhere along the way, we are taught to fear mistakes. We are punished for them, mocked for them, made to believe they are a reflection of who we are instead of steps along the path to who we might become. Real life does not unfold in perfect lines. Greatness is not a clean story. The world's most accomplished individuals bear scars from their defeats. They have been laughed at, told no, told never. But what separated them from others was not their intelligence or their luck. It was their relationship with failure. They did not see it as the end of the road, but as a bend in the path. They did not internalize it as identity, but used it as instruction. Consider how many gifts the world would have lost had fear of failure been obeyed. Imagine if Thomas Edison had stopped after his 100th failed attempt. Imagine if J.K. Rowling had believed the publishers who turned her away. Their persistence was not born of arrogance. It was born of belief. Belief that failure is part of the journey, not the destination. At its core, fear of failure is a misunderstanding of life itself. We believe that we are supposed to succeed quickly, cleanly, without pain. But real transformation is messy. Success is forged in the fire of setbacks. It is not the absence of falling, but the refusal to remain on the ground. And often, the deepest wisdom, the most lasting growth, comes not from what goes right, but from what goes wrong. The great tragedy is not in falling short. It is in not trying at all. It is in staying small because you feared you might fail big. It is in silencing your ideas, your voice, your heart, all because you feared how others might respond. But the truth is, everyone is afraid. Everyone imagines the worst. The difference lies in what we do with that fear. The mind will always offer 1,000 reasons to wait, to stop, to step back. But the soul only needs one reason to move forward, the knowing that your life is meant for more. That beyond failure lies growth, that beyond fear lies freedom, and that the only true failure is the life unlived because of a fear imagined. Let fear speak, but do not obey. Let failure happen, then rise again. Because you are not here to live cautiously, you are here to live fully. Procrastination is not laziness, nor is it a simple flaw in discipline. It is something far more subtle, more psychological, more deeply rooted in the fragile architecture of the human psyche. It wears the face of rationality and the tone of self-compassion. It convinces us that waiting is wisdom, that postponement is preparation, that delay is just a detour. But beneath its gentle whisper lies the slow erosion of possibility. We often imagine procrastination as an issue of time. We think if only we had better schedules, more energy, or fewer distractions, we would do what needs to be done. But procrastination is rarely about time. It is about emotion. It is not the clock we are battling. It is ourselves. We postpone not because we don't know what to do, but because we are overwhelmed by how it makes us feel. To begin something meaningful often exposes us to the fear of imperfection. We fear that if we start writing the book, it won't be good enough. If we begin building the business, we might fail. If we make the call, speak the truth, show the world our voice, we may face rejection, embarrassment, or disappointment. So we delay, not because we are unwilling, but because we are afraid. The mind, ever the protector of our comfort, creates convincing narratives. Not today, I'm too tired. Next week, I'll have more clarity. I'll do it when I feel more confident. But these are not promises, they are evasions. There is no perfect time, no moment where fear evaporates and courage appears fully formed. That day we keep waiting for the one where we are finally ready. It never comes on its own. In truth, readiness is a myth. It is not something you wait for. It is something you create through action. We become ready by beginning, not the other way around. The first word, the first step, the first effort. These are the sparks that ignite motion. And motion gives birth to clarity. The fog doesn't lift before you walk. It clears as you walk. Realize how often people live their entire lives in the waiting room of their dreams. A person with a story to tell keeps it locked in the pages of their mind, waiting for inspiration. Another with a vision for change never acts, believing they need one more course, one more guarantee, one more sign. Meanwhile, life passes, not in dramatic failures, but in quiet hesitations. There is a certain cruelty in procrastination that goes unnoticed. It steals not just your time, but your self-trust. Every task left undone is a message to your subconscious. I cannot rely on myself. And the more you postpone, the heavier the shame becomes. Eventually, you do not avoid tasks because they are hard, but because they remind you of your own broken promises. But this cycle can be broken, not through grand resolutions, but through small beginnings. The act of beginning is sacred. It sends a new signal to the psyche. I am capable. I am willing. You do not need to write the whole book today, just the first paragraph. You do not need to master the craft. Just take the first class. You do not need to transform your life overnight. Just choose something, anything, and move. The truth is, action changes how you feel more than feelings create action. Confidence doesn't precede movement, it follows it. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move forward despite it. When you find yourself waiting again, ask, what am I really avoiding? More often than not, it is not the task, but the emotion beneath it. Face it, sit with the discomfort, and move anyway, because your future is not waiting in some perfect tomorrow. It is built in the imperfect, messy, glorious actions you take today. The need for approval is perhaps one of the most subtle prisons a person can live in. It disguises itself as belonging, as love, as acceptance, but at its root it is a denial of the self. When we begin to shape our lives around the approval of others, we lose contact with the deeper voice within, the one that speaks not to please, but to guide. We are social creatures, yes, and connection is essential. But when the need to be accepted becomes stronger than the need to be true, we begin to disappear. From a young age, we are taught to measure ourselves through the eyes of others. We are praised when we conform, rewarded when we obey, validated when we follow the script. Slowly, we learn that love can be conditional, that approval is something earned by suppressing our instincts, adjusting our dreams, and keeping our wildness in check. The child who loves to dance is told to be quiet. The one who dreams of the stars is urged to be realistic, and so we begin the slow, painful trade of authenticity for acceptance. Over time, this becomes a pattern, an invisible habit of mind. We choose what is safe, what is praised, what fits. We go to the universities we're expected to, enter careers that sound respectable, and live lives that look good on paper. And yet, something inside us begins to ache. Because deep down, we know when we're living someone else's story. No amount of applause can fill the silence of a soul ignored. Imagine the woman who dreams of becoming a musician. She hears melodies in her sleep, feels lyrics rise unbidden from her heart. But the people around her value stability, prestige, tradition, so she chooses law school. She smiles in photographs, receives compliments on her achievements, and yet, each step forward feels like a step away from herself. She has done everything right, and yet she feels wrong inside. This is the hidden cost of approval, the slow erosion of selfhood. Success, as it's often defined by the world, is deeply external. It is the job title, the salary, the number of followers. But these things are mirrors. They reflect what others value, not necessarily what we do. Real success is something quieter. It is alignment. It is the experience of living in harmony with your own soul, even when others don't understand. Even when the applause never comes. Because truthfully, the applause of the world means little if it drowns out your own voice. The moment you stop seeking permission to be who you are, everything changes. You stop asking, will they approve, and begin asking, is this right for me? That shift is everything. It is the beginning of inner freedom. You start choosing based on truth, not fear. You begin creating, speaking, moving, not to impress, but to express. That is when you become powerful, not because others crown you, but because you finally crown yourself. There is a kind of joy that cannot be faked. The joy of living authentically, of waking up and knowing that your choices, your words, your path are your own. It doesn't mean you'll never face resistance. It doesn't mean everyone will understand. But it does mean that you will no longer abandon yourself for their approval. Ask yourself, whose approval am I chasing? And what part of myself am I sacrificing to get it? Until you answer those questions, you may find yourself climbing a ladder only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. True peace doesn't come from applause. It comes from the quiet knowing that you are living your truth. Not perfectly, not without fear, but fully and finally as yourself. The most formidable enemy we ever face is not a person, not a failure, not even rejection. It is the silent war waged within our own mind. The thoughts we entertain, the language we use when no one else is listening, the beliefs we repeat like mantras in the dark. All of it forms the architecture of our reality. Not because it changes the world outside, but because it filters how we see, interpret, and respond to it. The internal dialogue is the compass by which we navigate life, and if that compass is broken, we can be moving with all our might but heading nowhere meaningful. We often underestimate the power of our own words, not just the ones we speak aloud, but the ones we whisper internally 1,000 times a day. I'm not good enough. I never get things right. Why even try? It never works for me. These may sound like harmless complaints, but they are not. They are psychological commands shaping how we behave, what we expect, and ultimately what we allow ourselves to become. The human brain is not a fixed machine. It is constantly evolving, reshaping itself based on experience and repetition. Neuroscience calls this process neuroplasticity. It means the more a certain thought is fired in the brain, the more automatic and effortless it becomes. If we repeatedly think we are failures, if we habitually criticize ourselves, doubt ourselves, and expect the worst, our brain literally gets better at making that kind of thinking easier and faster. Over time, this becomes our default. We don't even realize it's happening. We just begin to live out a story we never consciously chose. But if the brain has the capacity to wire itself in one direction, it also has the power to rewire itself in another. This is where your strength lies, not in denying the negative thoughts, but in confronting them and choosing differently. You are not at the mercy of your mind, you are its master. You can teach it a new language. Instead of "I'm a failure," say "I'm still learning." Instead of "nothing ever works for me," say "I'm figuring out what does." These aren't empty affirmations, they are interventions. Each one is a small but powerful act of self-rescue. Consider the way you would speak to someone you love, your child, your best friend, someone in pain. You would never belittle them, never call them worthless, never tell them to give up. And yet, we do this to ourselves without flinching. The irony is cruel. The person we live with most closely, our self, is often treated with the least compassion. If anything needs to change, it is this. We must become better caretakers of our inner world. Not out of indulgence, but out of necessity, because the voice inside determines the life outside. It takes effort to shift this dialogue. It requires attention, consistency, and patience. Some days will feel like progress, others like relapse. But every time you replace self-criticism with self-respect, you are building a new path, and eventually that path becomes easier to walk, not because the terrain changes, but because your relationship to it does. No one escapes struggle. No one is immune to fear, doubt, or regret. But some people rise, not because life was kinder to them, but because they spoke to themselves with kindness when life was not. They remembered who they were when the world tried to make them forget. And they rewrote the script inside when it threatened to bury their light. You are not your worst thoughts. You are not your lowest moment. You are the one who notices the thought, who feels the weight of it, and still chooses to write something new. And in that choice, in that brave, quiet choice, you reclaim your story. So who is the biggest enemy of success? It is not the economy, not your past, not your competitors. It is the unhealed voice inside you that says, you can't. But now you've seen it, named it, faced it, and once you face the enemy within, no enemy outside can ever defeat you. The journey to success isn't about doing more, it's about becoming more aware, more courageous, more aligned. And it starts not someday, but now. Take the first step, even if your hands tremble, even if your voice shakes, because success doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It is born in the moment you decide, no more fear. No more delay, this is my time.